Today, the judge in former President Donald Trump's federal election subversion case making it known she's not considering the 2024 presidential election or Trump's campaign schedule in deciding next steps in the case. In the first hearing since the Supreme Court's immunity ruling, Judge Tanya Chutkan pushed back against Trump's legal team, saying the November election is not relevant as she decides how the case will move forward. CNN senior crime and justice reporter Caitlin Polantz is live outside the federal courthouse for us here in Washington. Caitlin, what more did we learn from today's hearing?
Well, Boris, it was quite a zippy hearing for about an hour and 15 minutes. Judge Tanya Chutkan went back and forth primarily with Donald Trump's defense lawyer, John Lauro, who's trying to put things on hold as long as he can to make things last a long time so that they can do legal arguments, gather their information, look at things. But inside this building, in Judge Chutkan's courtroom, the election just is not playing a role for Donald Trump as a criminal defendant. A quote from the judge: "I'm not talking about the presidency of the United States. I'm talking about the four corners of the indictment." Yet they still have to talk about the presidency because in this case, they have to figure out what to do with presidential immunity and how it applies here to Donald Trump after the election, especially in his exchanges with the then Vice President Mike Pence. And the Justice Department is prepared in just a couple weeks to start laying out evidence, if the judge wants it then, to put in papers, grand jury transcripts, interview records, documents, FBI memos, all kinds of pieces of evidence we've never seen before that aren't even mentioned in the indictment. They're ready to go if that's what the judge wants to do next.
So, Caitlin, what are we anticipating is going to be the next shoe to drop? What comes next?
Well, today even, we could have Judge Tanya Chutkan's decision on what the schedule is going forward and when the Justice Department could potentially be laying out this evidence that they say they have ready to share and make public to a certain extent. The thing, though, that we don't have at this time is a trial date. The judge is pretty clear she's not going to set one at this time because everybody in this case agrees, Boris, there's going to be at least one more round of appeals that's going to put everything on hold.
Caitlin Polantz live outside the federal courthouse. Thank you so much. Let's discuss further with John Dean. He served as White House counsel for former President Richard Nixon. Also with us, former federal prosecutor Jennifer Rogers. Thank you both for being with us. First to you, Jennifer, was today a win for one side or the other? How do you read it?
Well, not really a win for one side or the other, I would say. I mean, Judge Chutkan, who I continue to be impressed by the way, continues to kind of give each side some of what they want, but not all of what they want. I think if you had to pick, you would say it was a win for the government because Judge Chutkan made clear that she doesn't agree with Judge Cannon in Florida's dismissal of that case on the grounds that the special counsel was not properly appointed. And she also doesn't seem inclined to string out this series of motions and let them do one at a time and, you know, all that sort of back and forth that would take months and months. On the other hand, the government wanted her to reject as waived the arguments, some of the arguments that the Trump team was making because they didn't make them soon enough pursuant to the prior schedule, and she seemed inclined to consider those. So she gave each side a little bit, but continues to keep tight reins on this thing to move it along to the extent that she can.
John, what stood out to you in court?
In particular, I would say the fact that she doesn't think this election that is all around us is going to influence her decision on this case at all. And that's actually the norm and the way it should be, unlike some of the other cases where it's playing a bigger role. So I think that's the most standout point to me, that she's all business, no politics in her courtroom, and we're going to get a schedule today, and that will resolve a lot of these issues.
I love the way John described the election. It's all around us. It's all consuming, it seems at times. John, I'm curious about how you think Judge Chutkan is going to approach this superseding indictment. Is she inclined, does it seem to you, to leave it as is or potentially ask for more changes?
It appears to me, based on the hearsay reporting we get out of the court secondhand, there may be a transcript later today too, or soon thereafter, and we'll have a better idea. But it seems that she's going to try to make some sense out of the Supreme Court's ruling, that she's going to dive right into the issue of whether or not Mike Pence, the vice president, can be a player in this trial or not. The government wants that. They want to cast him not as his role as vice president, but as the president of the Senate and a candidate for re-election. So that, and I heard nothing that she rejected any of that outright, notwithstanding arguments by Trump's lawyers. So I thought I had a very good feel about today, that we're in the hands of a very competent judge, and she's going to make some very clear decisions today that will, as a result of scheduling, and we'll have a better feel at when that schedule comes out.
Jennifer, how could this issue of Mike Pence and whether what he was doing was, an official act or an unofficial act, how could that affect the strength of the special counsel's case?
Well, I think one of the reasons they wanted to, that part of the criminal scheme, the pressure campaign on Mike Pence, is because it is one of the strongest parts of the case. I mean, these phone calls and all of this pressure, as the other parts of the scheme were failing and were not getting Trump what he wanted, the last ditch effort to get Mike Pence not to accept the real electors and to throw it all back into for voting was a huge part of this, a really damning part. And so I think they really want to keep that in. Judge Chutkan's challenge, though, is to just make sure that it is properly staying in. I mean, no one, not the judge certainly, and not the prosecutors, although I shouldn't say no one because I think Team Trump wants this. They don't want to go up the chain again twice, right? We know we're going to have appeals on the immunity decision that Judge Chutkan makes. We don't want to have it go back up and then come back down for further findings. Be very careful to evaluate all of this with a very close eye on this Mike Pence evidence and hopefully get it right so that we only have one more set of appeals before she can set a trial date.
And John, I'm curious to get your reaction to Judge Chutkan saying that anything that she decides is going to get appealed. She sort of notes that the entire process is going to be challenged the entire way through by Trump's legal team in myriad ways. What did you make of that?
Well, the fact that she's open to the idea that she'll entertain whether they can even appeal whether the special prosecutor is properly appointed, while she wouldn't let it in today and they're not timely, she didn't throw it out as something they couldn't even raise, shows how fair she is and how she's going to look at everything. So in that context, the fact that she'll be reviewed on everything is not terribly surprising. But she's a good judge, and I think she'll make the right decisions in these cases. She will be fair, and so she'll probably survive any appeals.